There is something different about you, and you have known it for a long time. Not in the way that feels like a compliment, but in the way that feels like a weight you carry alone, in the quiet, when nobody is watching. You have sat in rooms full of people and still felt like you were on the other side of a glass wall, watching everyone else laugh and belong while something inside you remained unmoved, unsatisfied, reaching for something you could not even name. You have smiled when you were supposed to smile, nodded when you were supposed to nod, and then gone home and stared at the ceiling wondering why none of it felt like enough. And the strangest part is that you could not explain it to anyone, because the moment you tried, the words came out wrong, or the person across from you nodded politely and changed the subject, and you learned slowly that some things are too deep to hand to someone who has not yet learned how to hold them. They called you a joke, maybe not always out loud. Sometimes it was in the way they looked at you when you shared your dream. Sometimes it was in the silence after you spoke, the kind of silence that says we are not taking you seriously without anyone having to use those words. Sometimes it was a laugh, quick and dismissive, the kind that was meant to shrink you back down to a size they felt comfortable with. And for a moment, maybe for a long season, it worked. You got quieter. You stopped sharing. You learned to protect the most sacred parts of yourself behind walls that nobody could reach, because it hurt less than handing someone something precious and watching them drop it without even realizing what they had just let fall. But here is what I need you to understand right now. The people who called you a joke did not have the authority to write the ending of your story. They only had access to one chapter, and the chapter they saw was not the whole book. It was not even close. They saw you in the middle of your formation and called it your final form. They saw you in the season of preparation and called it the season of failure. They watched you struggle and assumed the struggle meant you were losing, when the truth is that everything you were walking through was making you into something they would one day not be able to look away from. You are a chosen one. I do not say that as a phrase designed to make you feel better in the moment. I say it because there are specific signs that only people like you carry, and if you have found your way to this message today, I believe you already know at least some of them. The first sign is that your dreams have been getting sharper lately, more vivid, more loaded with meaning, as if something is trying to communicate with you while the noise of the day goes quiet. The second sign is that you have felt a restlessness you cannot explain, a frustration that does not come from anything specific happening in your life, but from something deep inside you that knows you are not yet walking in the fullness of what you were made for. The third sign is that you have been pulled back to certain ideas, certain callings, certain visions over and over again, even when you tried to let them go, even when life tried to bury them under grief and disappointment, and the slow erosion of deferred hope. The fourth sign is that the very people who dismissed you were often the people with the least capacity to carry what you were carrying. Their rejection was not a verdict on your value. It was a confirmation that what you hold is not for everyone to understand. Not everyone is equipped to recognize a chosen one while they are still in the becoming. Some people can only see the crown after it has been placed, never while it is being forged. The fifth sign, and this one matters deeply, is that you are here, not by accident, not by scrolling past something meaningless and stopping for no reason. You stopped here because something in you recognized something in this message before a single word was finished. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. That is the part of you that still knows, even after everything that tried to make you forget, that there is something greater at work in your life than the opinions of people who could not see past their own limitations. Heaven does not waste appointments. You are not randomly assigned to a difficult road, to a season of being misunderstood, to years of holding something no one around you could see. There is a design underneath all of it. There is a name being written, not in the opinion of those who laughed, but in something far more permanent. The people who could not see your worth were not disqualifying you. They were unknowingly separating you, clearing the space around you, removing themselves from a chapter they were never meant to be part of. You are not the version of yourself they told that story about. You are the one who kept going when every reason to stop was laid out in front of you. You are the one who still believed quietly in the dark, when belief felt like the most foolish thing in the world. You are the one who carried a dream so long that it became part of your bones, and even when you tried to set it down, you could not, because it was never just a dream. It was a calling, and callings do not let go, even when you try to release them, because they were placed inside you by something greater than circumstance and stronger than rejection. The name they could not escape is yours. The story they could not stop is yours. The future that makes every painful chapter of the past suddenly make sense is yours. And it is not coming one day in some distant place after you have proven enough and suffered enough and waited long enough. It has already begun. The shift you have been sensing is not your imagination running ahead of reality. The stirring you have been feeling is not restlessness without purpose. It is awakening with direction. It is the sound of a season turning, and you are standing right at the center of it. You were not almost ready. You were ready the moment you showed up here. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that nobody talks about, and it is the kind that comes not from working too hard or sleeping too little, but from carrying something invisible for too long. It is the exhaustion of holding a vision that nobody around you can see. It is the exhaustion of explaining yourself to people who have already decided what you are. It is the exhaustion of showing up again and again, to a life that has not yet caught up to everything you know you were meant for. And if you are honest, if you let yourself sit in the truth of it for just a moment, you will recognize that exhaustion right now, because it is the kind that lives in your chest, not in your muscles. I want to name 4 things that people who are in a waiting season will recognize immediately, not because I am guessing, but because these are the signs that show up in the lives of chosen ones who are standing at the edge of their breakthrough, without yet being able to see the other side. The first is a wave of grief that arrives without warning. You are going about your day, doing something ordinary, and suddenly something rises up from inside you that has nothing to do with what is happening in the present moment. It is grief about the past, about the years that moved differently than you planned, about the version of your life that existed in your imagination a decade ago and looks nothing like the one you are standing in now. This grief is not weakness. It is not evidence that you made wrong choices or that something is broken inside you. It is the soul processing the distance between where you are and where you always knew you were going, and that processing is part of the preparation, not a sign that preparation has failed. The second sign is that certain places and certain people have begun to feel heavy in a way they did not before. You walk into a room that used to feel familiar and something in you pulls back, not out of arrogance, not out of judgment, but out of a deep internal knowing that you are no longer a match for that environment. People you have known for years suddenly feel distant, not because anything dramatic happened, but because you are shifting and they are staying still, and the space between you is growing in ways that are quiet but undeniable. This is disorienting. It feels like loss, and in some ways it is. But it is also the most natural thing in the world for someone who is moving into a new dimension of their purpose. The third sign is a recurring dream or a recurring image or a recurring feeling of a door that has not yet opened. You have stood in front of it in your sleep. You have reached for the handle in your waking thoughts. You have felt the certainty that what is on the other side of that door is real and it is yours, but the door has not moved yet, and the waiting has sometimes felt unbearable. I want you to know that. The door is not locked against you. It was never locked against you. It has simply been waiting for the version of you that is strong enough, rooted enough, and clear enough to walk through it without being overwhelmed by what is on the other side. The fourth sign is that the same message keeps finding you from different directions. A verse, a lyric, a conversation, a video, a line in a book you opened without planning to. The same essential message, arriving from different sources, as if something is making sure you receive what you need to receive before the next chapter begins. If you are watching this right now and you have been noticing that pattern, this message is part of that pattern. You did not stumble here, you were sent here. Now I want to talk about something that matters more than most people realize, and that is the difference between being overlooked and being positioned. Because from the outside, they look identical. Both involve waiting. Both involve not being seen the way you deserve to be seen. Both involve standing in places where your value is not being fully recognized. But they are completely different realities. Being overlooked means something was missed, something was lost, something needs to be recovered. Being positioned means you are exactly where you are supposed to be for reasons that will become clear when the time is right. The people who called you a joke were not overlooking you in the way that implies something went wrong. They were revealing their own limitations while you were being quietly positioned for something they could not yet see. The rejection was not evidence of your ceiling. It was evidence of theirs. Every room that did not receive you was a room you were never meant to stay in. Every person who dismissed you was a person whose chapter in your story was already complete, even if you did not know it yet. I know there have been nights when you lay awake wondering if you had gotten it wrong, wondering if the dream was just a dream after all, wondering if the sense of calling you carried was simply pride dressed up in spiritual language. I know there have been mornings where you woke up and had to choose, consciously and deliberately, to believe one more day, even when nothing visible was confirming that belief. I know what it costs to keep showing up to something that has not yet shown up for you. That cost is real, and I am not going to minimize it. The sleepless nights were real. The loneliness was real. The feeling of being misunderstood by the people closest to you was real. The moment when you stopped telling people your plans because their doubt was louder than your faith, that was real too. I am not here to tell you that it did not hurt. It did. And the hurt was not a sign that you were weak. It was a sign that you cared deeply about something that mattered, and caring about something that matters is never something to be ashamed of. But here is the reframe I want to offer you, not to rush past the pain, but to give it its proper meaning. You were not being punished during those seasons. You were being protected. You were not being held back. You were being held together, built up, made ready for a weight of purpose that requires a particular kind of foundation. The waiting was not your sentence. It was your schooling, and the degree you earned. In that invisible classroom is one that no institution could have given you, and no shortcut could have produced. You are not someone who was overlooked and is hoping to finally be seen. You are someone who was positioned and is now stepping into the season where the positioning becomes visible. There is a difference, and that difference changes everything about how you carry yourself from this moment forward. If you felt something move inside you while you were reading this, if something in your chest said, "Yes, that is me, that is exactly what I have been living," then I want you to type the words "I see it" in the comments right now. Not for me, for yourself, as an act of acknowledgement, as a declaration that you are done pretending the waiting has not been hard, and you are ready to receive the meaning behind it. Before we go any further, I want to give you something practical to hold on to, because I know that what you have been carrying is not just emotional, and it is not just spiritual. It is also very real and very daily. And sometimes what a chosen one needs in the middle of a long season is not another beautiful word about destiny. Sometimes what you need is something to do with your hands, something to do with your breath, something that brings the invisible into the visible in a way you can actually feel in your body and your mind right now, today, before this day is over. So I want to introduce you to something I call the return protocol. It is not a complex system. It is not something that requires a special environment or a perfect mental state or an hour of uninterrupted silence. It is 3 steps, and you can begin them anywhere: in your car, at your kitchen table, on your lunch break, in the few minutes before the rest of your household wakes up. The only requirement is that you mean it. The only qualification is that you show up for it the way you have been showing up for everything else in your life, with honesty, with whatever you have left, and with the quiet, stubborn belief that it matters. The first step is called the grace of the closed door. I want you to think of one thing, just one, that you are grateful did not happen. Not something you are grateful for because it went well. Something you are grateful for because it did not go the way you once desperately wanted it to. A relationship that did not work out. A job you did not get. A city you did not move to. A version of your life that collapsed before it was built. At the time, that closed door may have felt like devastation. It may have felt like proof that you were not good enough, not lucky enough, not favored enough. But I want you to sit with it now from a different angle, because if you are honest, if you trace the line from that closed door to where you are standing today, you will find that the closing of that door was the beginning of a direction. You could not have found any other way. That door did not close against you. It closed for you. Gratitude for a closed door is one of the most powerful forms of faith a chosen one can practice, because it is gratitude that does not require a visible reward. It is gratitude that trusts the architecture of a plan you cannot yet see in full. Sit with that closed door for 60 seconds. Do not explain it. Do not analyze it. Just say, quietly, in whatever language your heart speaks, "Thank you for what did not happen, because what is coming required the space." The second step is called the now declaration. This is where you take everything we have talked about, the positioning, the purpose, the season of being formed rather than forgotten, and you speak it into the present tense. Not the future tense, because the future tense keeps things at a distance, and distance is what has kept too many chosen ones from receiving what is already theirs. The declaration is simple, and you can say it exactly like this, or you can say it in your own words as long as the meaning stays intact. You say, "I am not waiting to become. I am already becoming. What is mine is not on its way. It is already moving toward me. I am not standing outside the door of my purpose. I am standing inside it, and I have been for longer than I realized." Say it like you mean it. Say it even if part of you does not fully believe it yet, because declarations are not just expressions of belief. They are also instruments of belief. You speak the thing into your own atmosphere before it arrives in your circumstances, and the speaking is part of how it arrives. This is not positive thinking dressed up in spiritual language. This is the ancient practice of calling things that are not yet visible as though they already are. And every chosen one who ever walked into the fullness of their calling did it while some part of the evidence was still missing. The third step is the one that ties everything together, and it is also the one that most people skip because it feels too simple to be powerful. It is 7 minutes of silence, not meditation in the formal sense, not emptying your mind, not achieving any particular mental state. Just 7 minutes of intentional quiet in which you do nothing except breathe and remain open. No phone. No background noise if you can. Help it. Just you and the space around you, and the willingness to receive whatever needs to settle in the part of you that has been running on noise and urgency, and the low hum of anxiety for far too long. 7 minutes is not an arbitrary number. There is a reason I am asking for exactly 7 minutes and not 5, not 10, not 20. And I am going to explain that reason fully in just a moment, because it connects to something that researchers have been studying for decades, something that has been quietly confirmed by some of the most serious neuroscientific work done in the last 30 years, and something that changes the conversation about why chosen ones process the world differently than everyone around them, and what you can actually do about it in a way that is measurable and real, and begins working from the very first session. But before I get there, I want you to try step 3 right now if you can. or commit to trying it before this day closes. Because what I am about to share with you will land differently, will mean more, will feel more possible, if you have already given your nervous system 7 minutes of the kind of quiet it has probably been starving for without you even realizing how hungry it was. The return protocol is yours. 3 steps: the grace of the closed door, the now declaration, 7 minutes of intentional silence. It does not cost anything. It does not require a perfect version of you. It only requires the version of you that showed up today, which, I want to remind you, is exactly the version that was always meant to begin this. There is a reason chosen ones have always felt like they were operating on a different frequency than the people around them. Not better, not superior, but different in a way that is measurable, in a way that science has been quietly confirming for decades, and in a way that finally gives language to something you have probably felt your entire life but could never quite articulate. You have always processed things more deeply. You have always sensed things before they were spoken. You have always felt the weight of a room, the energy of a conversation, the undercurrent of a situation in a way that others around you seemed completely unaware of. And for a long time, you may have wondered if that sensitivity was a liability. I want to tell you today that it is not a liability. It is a frequency, and that frequency has a name. Researchers call it gamma. It is a specific pattern of brain wave activity that has been associated in study after study with heightened perception, accelerated learning, deep creative insight, and what scientists describe as moments of sudden clarity, the kind of clarity where a solution appears fully formed, where a direction becomes obvious, where something that was confusing resolves itself in an instant. These are the moments that people throughout history have called eureka moments, breakthrough moments, moments of divine download. And what neuroscience has found is that these moments are not random. They are not reserved for a special category of genius. They are the result of a specific brain state that any human being can access, but that most people never deliberately cultivate because they do not know it is possible. This is where the work of Dr. James Rivers becomes important to this conversation. Dr. Rivers is a neuroscientist who trained at MIT and spent more than 30 years conducting research into the relationship between brain wave patterns and human performance, creativity, and what he describes as the activation of latent potential. His research included a collaboration with NASA scientists who were studying the cognitive patterns of individuals performing at the absolute highest levels of human capability. What they found across thousands of study days was something that changed the direction of his work entirely. They found that the brains of highly creative, highly intuitive, highly effective individuals shared a common pattern. Not identical, but deeply similar. And at the center of that pattern was a specific relationship between 2 types of brain waves. The first is theta, which operates at a frequency of between 4 and 8 cycles per second and is associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, intuition, and the kind of open receptive state that children operate in almost constantly before the demands of adult life begin to close it down. The second is gamma, which operates at a higher frequency and is associated with peak cognitive performance, rapid information processing, and those moments of sudden insight that feel less like thinking and more like receiving. What Dr. Rivers discovered is that most adults, as they move through the pressures and conditioning of daily life, gradually lose access to these 2 states. Not because the capacity disappears, but because the noise of modern living, the chronic stress, the overstimulation, the constant input, essentially drowns out the signal. The brain defaults to a survival mode of processing, and the deeper, more expansive frequencies get pushed to the margins. The result is a version of yourself that is functional but not fully activated, capable but not fully expressed, present but not fully alive in the way you were designed to be. The solution Dr. Rivers developed after decades of research is called brainwave entrainment. The principle behind it is elegant in its simplicity. The brain has a natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic external stimuli. When you expose the brain to specific audio frequencies, carefully engineered sequences of sound that carry the precise mathematical signature of theta and gamma states, the brain begins to follow. It synchronizes. It shifts from its default survival frequency into the expanded frequency that chosen ones carry naturally, but that most people have been gradually cut off from by the accumulated weight of stress, disappointment, and a world that rewards busyness over depth. The audio that Dr. Rivers created from this research is called the Genius Wave. It is 7 minutes long. That is not a coincidence. 7 minutes is the precise window his research identified as the optimal duration for initiating brainwave entrainment without triggering the fatigue response that longer sessions can produce. Long enough to shift the brain state meaningfully. Short enough to fit into any day without requiring a restructuring of your life. You do not need to meditate. You do not need any prior experience with breathwork or mindfulness. You do not need to be in a particular mental state when you begin. You simply listen, and the audio does the work of guiding your brain into the frequency that your calling requires. I want to tell you about someone who came to the Genius Wave in a season that sounds a great deal like the one you may be in right now. She had been carrying her dream for 14 years. 14 years of building towards something that kept feeling just out of reach. She had tried everything that the personal development world had to offer. Books, courses, journaling, therapy, accountability groups. None of it was wrong, but none of it was moving the needle in the way she needed. She started using the Genius Wave for 7 minutes each morning before the rest of her household was awake. Within the first week, she noticed that her thinking was clearer. Within the first month, she had made a decision she had been avoiding for 2 years. Within 90 days, her income had shifted in a way she described as not feeling like hustle. It felt like alignment. Another person, a man who had been dismissed by every professional circle he had tried to enter, started using the Genius Wave during a season when he had almost convinced himself that the vision he carried was arrogance rather than calling. He told Dr. Rivers afterward that the first thing he noticed was not a dramatic external change. It was an internal quieting, a settling, a sense of being able to hear himself, think clearly for the first time in years. That clarity led to a conversation. That conversation led to an opportunity. And that opportunity opened a door that had been standing in front of him for years without him being able to see it. I know that some of you are thinking right now that $39 is not nothing. And I want to honor that thought completely, because it is a real thought and it deserves a real response. You are right. $39 is not nothing. It is a real amount of money and it represents a real choice. But I want you to hold it next to the cost of 1 more year of operating below the frequency you were designed. For 1 more year of having the vision but not the clarity. 1 more year of knowing you were made for more but not being able to access the brain state that makes more possible. The Genius Wave normally sells for $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below, it is available today for just $39. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you listen for 7 minutes a day for 90 days and you do not experience a meaningful shift in your clarity, your creativity, your sense of direction, you get every dollar back. The risk is not on you. It is on the research. One thing I need to say clearly. There are versions of this product being sold through other links and other channels that are not legitimate. The only place to access the real Genius Wave, the original audio developed from Dr. Rivers' research, is through the single link in the pinned comment below this video. Do not purchase from any other source. What you receive through that link is the genuine protocol, the one, backed by 30 years of neuroscientific research, and a guarantee that protects your investment completely. This offer at $39 is not permanent. The number of people who can access it at this price point is limited, and when that limit is reached, the price returns to $49 without notice. If something in you is saying yes while you are reading this, I want to encourage you not to let that yes sit unanswered. The frequency you were born to carry is waiting to be restored. The link below is simply the door. There is something I want to acknowledge before we go any further, and I want to do it without rushing past it, without wrapping it in comfort before I have let it breathe. Because one of the things that chosen ones deserve and rarely receive is someone who is willing to sit in the hard part with them instead of immediately trying to fix it or reframe it or turn it into a lesson before the wound has even been properly named. So let me sit here with you for a moment, not as someone who has all the answers, not as someone standing on the other side of your pain looking back with the comfortable wisdom of distance, but as someone who understands that the road you have been walking has had a real cost, and that cost deserves to be spoken out loud before anything else can be received. The waiting took things from you, real things, specific things, things that cannot be returned by a revelation or a breakthrough or even the most beautiful season of restoration. And I think you need to hear someone say that plainly, without immediately following it with a but, before you can fully receive what is coming. Because there is a part of you that has been waiting not just for your breakthrough, but for permission to grieve what was lost, permission to say it was hard without someone rushing in to remind you that it was also forming you. Both things are true, but the forming does not cancel the hard. And tonight, I want to honor the hard first. The years of waiting took relationships that should have been built. There were people who could have walked beside you in a season when you were walking alone, people whose presence might have changed the texture of some of your hardest years, people whose laughter might have made the long stretches feel less like exile and more like journey. But the isolation of your calling created a distance that not everyone was willing or able to cross. Some friendships faded not because of conflict or betrayal, but simply because the road you were on required a pace and a direction that most people around you were not moving in. And you had to let them go, one by one, sometimes without even a proper goodbye, sometimes without even fully understanding why the distance kept growing no matter how hard you reached across it. And the loneliness of that is something that does not fully resolve itself just because a new season is beginning. It leaves a particular kind of quiet in a person that even joy, when it arrives, has to learn to share space with. The waiting took career momentum that you can see clearly now in hindsight. The opportunities that passed while you were still finding your footing. The positions that went to people with less vision but more conventional presentation. The rooms you were not invited into not because you lacked the capacity, but because you had not yet learned how to translate what you carried into a language the gatekeepers could. Recognize you watched people move ahead of you, people who, if you are honest, you knew did not carry what you carry. And rather than making you bitter, which would have been entirely understandable, it made you question yourself, which was in some ways far harder to survive. Because bitterness at least feels like strength. It gives you something to stand against. Self-doubt feels like surrender. It takes the fight out of you quietly, from the inside, in the moments when no one is watching, and you are most vulnerable to the voices that have been collecting evidence against you for years. The waiting took your freedom to dream out loud. There was a time earlier, before the disappointments accumulated into a pattern you could no longer ignore, when you could speak your vision without filtering it first. When you could say what you believed you were meant for without bracing for the reaction, without scanning the face of the person across from you to see whether they were with you or already preparing to talk you down. And then, gradually, after enough raised eyebrows and polite silences and conversations that ended with someone trying to manage your expectations as if your expectations were the problem, you learned to keep the biggest dreams inside. You developed an internal life that was rich and expansive and full of everything you still believed, but the external version of you became quieter, more guarded, more careful with what you offered and to whom. And while that guardedness protected you from further wounding, it also cost you something irreplaceable: the spontaneous joy of a dream shared freely, the lightness of believing without having to defend the believing, the particular kind of aliveness that comes from letting someone else see the full size of what you are reaching for. And the waiting took, perhaps most painfully of all, your trust in yourself. Because when you carry a sense of calling for long enough without visible confirmation, when the internal certainty and the external reality remain so far apart for so long, eventually, a question rises that is almost too frightening to speak aloud even in your own mind. What if I was wrong about myself? What if what I thought was a calling was simply wishful thinking dressed up in spiritual language? What if the people who doubted me were seeing something clearly that I could not see because I was too close to it, too emotionally invested, too unwilling to admit that the dream was mine and not necessarily my destiny? That question, and the shame that wraps itself around it, is one of the heaviest things a chosen one carries. And I want you to know that. The fact that you asked it does not mean the answer is yes. It means you are honest. It means you are human. It means you have been waiting long enough that even your faith has had to fight for its own survival, has had to choose itself again on mornings when every visible circumstance was arguing the other side. I want to take you now to a story you may know, but I want to take you specifically to the part that rarely gets told with the attention it deserves. The part that comes before the victory. The part that looks, from the inside, like nothing is working and nothing will ever work, and the people who believed in you were simply too generous with their belief. There was a young man whose brothers looked at him and saw a problem. They did not see a leader. They did not see a dreamer with a destiny written across the whole architecture of his future. They saw someone whose presence irritated them, whose favor with their father offended them, whose dreams seemed like delusion dressed up in confidence, like arrogance that had not yet been properly corrected. And so they made a decision. They stripped him of the coat that represented his identity, the visible sign of who his father had declared him to be. They threw him into a pit. And then, in the detail that breaks me every time I return to it, they sat down and ate a meal while he was at the bottom of it because his pain was not significant enough to interrupt their appetite. His crying did not move them. His presence in the pit was simply background noise to their lunch. His name was Joseph, and I am not going to tell you yet what happened next, because that is not the part of the story I need you to sit with right now. I need you to sit with the pit. I need you to sit with what it feels like to be stripped of the thing that named you, to be thrown into a place you did not choose by the very people who should have been your covering, and to lie there listening to the ordinary sounds of life continuing above you, as if your crisis was an inconvenience rather than a catastrophe. Because some of you know that pit, not as a comfortable metaphor you can nod at from a distance, as a lived experience, as a season so specific and so isolating that you could describe the exact color of the walls and the exact weight of the silence. A season where you were stripped of something that identified you, placed somewhere you did not choose, and left to figure out how to breathe in a space that was never designed for someone with your capacity, your sensitivity, your depth of feeling. I am not going to rush past that. I am going to let it sit here with you, because the pit is real and what it cost you is real, and the grief of it deserves space before the glory of what comes next is allowed to arrive and cover it over as if it never happened. You are allowed to grieve what the waiting took. You are allowed to name the relationships, the momentum, the freedom, the self-trust, and say plainly and without apology, that cost me something. That mattered. That left a mark that I am still carrying. You do not have to pretend the mark is not there in order to prove you are ready for what is coming. You do not have to perform okayness as the price of admission to your next season. In fact, I would argue that pretending the mark is not there is precisely what keeps so many chosen ones from stepping fully into what is ahead, because they are carrying unacknowledged grief while trying to run toward an unacknowledged future. And the weight of the unspoken always slows the step, even when we are convinced we have outpaced it. So speak it, even if only to yourself, even if only right now in the quiet of wherever you are. Say what was taken. Name the years. Honor the cost. And then when you are ready, and only when you are ready, we will talk about what all of that cost was actually purchasing, and why the price was higher than it needed to be for anyone who was building something smaller. Now I want to give you a new language for what you have been living, because I believe that one of the reasons the waiting has felt so disorienting is that you have been trying to understand a sacred experience using ordinary vocabulary. And ordinary vocabulary is simply not large enough to hold what has been happening to you. There are two ancient concepts I want to introduce to you today, not as academic ideas, not as theological trivia, but as living frameworks that will change the way you read your own story from this moment forward. And once you have these words, once they settle into you the way a key settles into the lock it was made for, you will not be able to look at your past the same way. And more importantly, you will not be able to look at your present the same way either. The first concept comes from ancient Greek, and it is the distinction between two entirely different kinds of time. The first kind is called chronos. Chronos is clock time. It is the time that moves in one direction, that accumulates in days and weeks and months and years, that can be measured and tracked and counted. Chronos is the time you have been measuring your waiting in. It is the time that says you have been in this season for 3 years or 5 years or a decade. And it is the time that makes the waiting feel like loss, because every unit that passes is a unit that cannot be recovered. Chronos is the time that the people who called you a joke were counting when they looked at your life and concluded that nothing was happening. But there is a second kind of time, and it is called kairos. Kairos is not clock time. Kairos is the appointed moment, the right time, the time that is defined not by its position on a calendar, but by its quality, by its readiness, by the convergence of conditions that makes a particular moment the exact moment for a particular thing to occur. Kairos cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured by hustle or willpower, or the accumulation of more chronos. It simply arrives, and when it arrives, everything that chronos seemed to be withholding becomes available all at once. Here is what I need you to understand. You have not been waiting in chronos time without purpose. You have been being prepared for a kairos moment. And the people who looked at your chronos and called it failure could not see your kairos coming, because kairos is invisible to people who only know how to read clocks. They were counting days. Heaven was counting conditions, and the conditions are almost complete. Your kairos is not somewhere on a distant calendar. It is not contingent on more suffering, more proving, more enduring. It is contingent on readiness, and readiness is not the same as perfection. Readiness means the thing that was being built inside you during the waiting has reached the point where it can bear the weight of what is coming. And I want to tell you with everything I have in me that you are closer to that readiness than you have ever been. The second concept I want to give you is an ancient Hebrew word, and the word is kava. In most translations of ancient scripture, this word gets rendered simply as wait, and that translation, while not wrong, is so incomplete that it loses almost everything that makes the word powerful. Because kava does not mean to sit still and endure until something changes. Kava means to twist together, to braid, to intertwine. Like the making of a rope. When a rope is being made, individual strands are twisted together under tension. The tension is not accidental, and it is not evidence that something is wrong. The tension is precisely what creates the strength. Without the twisting, without the pressure of strand against strand, you do not have a rope. You have a collection of threads that will break under the first real weight placed upon them. Every year of your waiting was a strand being twisted into the rope of your calling. The grief was a strand. The loneliness was a strand. The self-doubt that you had to choose your way through again and again on mornings when choosing felt impossible was a strand. The relationships that fell away were strands. The career doors that did not open were strands. And I know that when you were inside those individual experiences, they felt like nothing more than loss. But from the angle of Kava, from the angle of what was actually being constructed during every season you thought you were simply surviving, you were being braided. You were being twisted together into something with a tensile strength that could not have been produced any other way. You were not delayed. You were not forgotten. You were not passed over in favor of someone more deserving. You were being assembled. Every strand of hardship, every strand of disappointment, every strand of quiet faithfulness in seasons where faithfulness felt pointless, was being woven into a rope strong enough to hold the weight of everything that is about to be placed in your hands. Now I want to bring these two concepts together with a third, because they belong together and they form a complete picture when they stand side by side. The third concept is what ancient wisdom traditions call the appointed time. This is the understanding that there are moments which are not created by human effort or human timing, but which are set in advance, written into the architecture of a life before that life has even begun its unfolding. The appointed time does not operate on the schedule of human ambition. It does not accelerate because we are impatient or decelerate because we have given up. It moves according to a precision that is entirely outside our ability to manipulate. And here is the part that I need you to receive deeply. The appointed time cannot be canceled by delay. It cannot be revoked by the opinions of people who looked at your life and saw nothing happening. It cannot be moved by the accumulation of Chronos years, in which the visible evidence seemed to contradict everything the invisible voice inside you kept insisting was true. What has been appointed for you has not been given to someone else while you were waiting. It has been held. It has been preserved with your name on it in a place that the opinions of human beings and the passage of human time cannot reach. The people who called you a joke were operating entirely in Chronos. They were counting the days of your delay and declaring it evidence of your sealing. But they had no access to your Kairos. They had no understanding of your Kava. And they had absolutely no knowledge of your appointed time, because appointed times are revealed to the ones they belong to, and they are revealed precisely at the moment when the revelation will do the most good. I want to say one more thing before we move forward, and it is this. The hour of revelation, the moment when everything you have been living through suddenly becomes legible, when the pattern becomes visible and the purpose becomes undeniable, is not a moment that happens to passive people. It is a moment that arrives for people who kept their eyes open during the darkness, who refused to let the Chronos years convince them that there was no Kairos coming, who held onto the rope they were becoming even when they could not see what it was being made strong enough to hold. That is you. That has always been you. What God appointed for you, no delay has the authority to cancel. The hour of revelation is not approaching. It is here. And you are not standing outside it looking in. You are standing inside it, finally able to see the walls clearly, and what is written on those walls has your name on every line. Something is shifting. I want you to feel that before I name it, because the feeling is more important than the words. And if you have been paying attention during this time together, you already sense it moving somewhere beneath the surface of your ordinary day, in the way that weather changes before the sky does, in the way that morning exists in the air before the light is visible. Something that has been still for a long time is beginning to move. And I want to walk you through 3 specific areas where that movement is going to become undeniable, not in some distant future season, but in the days and weeks that are already forming themselves around the life you are standing in right now. Before I do, I want to say this. There are things you should not do in this season. There are responses that will feel natural, but that will work against the very shift you have been waiting for. The first thing you should not do is try to control the pace of what is coming. The instinct of someone who has waited a long time is to grip tightly the moment things begin to move, to manage the unfolding, to make sure nothing slips through, to force the timeline back onto a schedule that feels safer than the open-handed trust that got you here. I understand that instinct completely, but gripping in a season of release is like closing your hand around water. The tighter you hold, the less you keep. What is coming requires the same open-handedness that the waiting required, and perhaps even more of it, because what arrives in a Kairos moment is often larger than what we planned for, and large things need room to land. The second thing you should not do is explain the shift to people who were not part of the preparation. There will be people in your life who notice that something is changing in you before the external evidence has fully appeared. And there will be a temptation to bring them inside the unfolding, to share what you are sensing, to invite their perspective on what is happening. For most of these people, resist that temptation, not because your community does not matter, but because a shift of this magnitude needs to consolidate before it is exposed to the weight of other people's doubt, their well-meaning caution, their instinct to protect you by managing your expectations. Let it root before you let it be seen. Let it become undeniable before you let it be questioned. The third thing you should not do is compare the shape of your breakthrough to anyone else's. The shift that is coming for you is going to look like your calling, not like the calling of the person you have been watching from a distance and measuring yourself against. It may arrive through a door you were not expecting. It may speak in a language that is specific to your history, your wiring, your particular form of the gift you carry. Do not dismiss it because it does not look like what you imagined. The appointed time delivers what was appointed, not what was imagined, and what was appointed for you was designed with a precision that your imagination, as expansive as it is, could not have fully anticipated. Now let me tell you what you can trust in this season. You can trust the internal compass that has guided you even when you could not explain how it was working. The same instinct that told you the waiting was not the end. The same quiet knowing that kept you from fully settling into a version of your life that was smaller than your calling. That instinct is reliable. It has been calibrated by everything you have walked through. It has been tested in conditions that would have silenced a less resilient voice. Trust it now more than you ever have, because it has earned that trust in the only way trust can be earned, through the proving ground of sustained faithfulness in the absence of visible reward. The first area where you are going to feel the shift is in your inner world. Before anything changes externally, something is going to settle in you that has not been settled in a very long time. A quieting, a sense of internal coherence, of the different parts of you coming into alignment after years of pulling in different directions. The anxiety that has been your constant background companion, the low hum of not yet, not enough, not sure, is going to begin to lift. Not all at once, and not without returning occasionally, because healing is rarely linear. But there will be moments, increasingly frequent moments, where you feel genuinely at rest in your own skin, where the question of whether you were right about yourself will simply stop feeling urgent, because something deeper than the question will have already answered it. You will wake up one morning and notice that you are not immediately reaching for the fear, that you are not running the familiar calculations of how far behind you are, and how much time you have lost, and whether the window has closed. You will simply be present in your own life, in your own body, in your own morning. And that presence will feel like something you have not felt in so long that it will take you a moment to recognize it. It is peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being resolved, but the peace that comes from knowing, at a level beneath explanation, that everything is being held. The second area where the shift is coming is in your relationships. And I want to describe this carefully, because it is going to happen in two directions simultaneously, and both directions are part of the same movement. In one direction, certain connections are going to complete themselves. People who have been in your life for reasons that belong to a chapter that is now closing will begin to naturally create distance, not through conflict or drama, but through a gentle mutual recognition that the season you shared has run its full course. Let them go with gratitude. What they carried you through was real, even if they are not meant to carry you forward. In the other direction, and this is the part I want you to watch for with open eyes, new connections are going to arrive that feel immediately different from what you are used to. People who speak your language without needing you to translate it first. People who recognize what you carry without requiring you to prove it. People whose presence does not drain you but restores you, who see the version of you that you have been protecting behind walls and respond not with skepticism but with recognition. These people are not random. They are being sent into your story at the precise moment when your story is ready for them. Do not dismiss them because the connection feels too easy, too natural, too quickly deep. Not everything that arrives easily is suspicious. Some things arrive easily because they were always meant to fit. The third area is the one that chosen ones most need to hear, and it is the area of resources and opportunity. For a long time, you have operated in a mode of striving, of working harder than the results seem to justify, of pushing against doors that were not yet ready to open and wondering why the effort was not producing the return. That mode is ending. What is coming is not an invitation to stop working or stop showing up. It is an invitation to stop straining. There is a difference between the effort that comes from scarcity, from the fear that if you do not force it, nothing will move, and the effort that comes from alignment, from moving with the current of what is already flowing in your direction. You are shifting from the first kind of effort to the second, and the difference in how it feels is the difference between swimming against a tide and being carried by one. Opportunity is going to begin finding you in ways that feel less like reward for effort and more like appointment. Doors are going to open that you did not push. Conversations are going to happen that you did not engineer. Resources are going to arrive from directions you were not watching, because the God of your appointed time does not operate only through the channels you have identified as possible. He operates through the whole of creation, and the whole of creation is being arranged around what belongs to you. You can trust this, not blindly, not passively, but with the active and eyes open trust of someone who has done the inner work, who has survived the pit, who has been braided by the waiting into something strong enough to carry what is coming. If something in you is rising right now, if there is a warmth in your chest or a quickening in your spirit that feels like recognition, I want you to type the words "I am ready" in the comments below. Not as a performance, as a declaration, as the sound of a chosen one stepping out of the waiting room and into the room where the shift has already begun. There is a name for who you are becoming, and I want to give it to you before this moment passes, because names matter more than most people realize. Names are not just labels. They are declarations. They are the shape of a destiny spoken into the atmosphere before the fullness of that destiny has become visible to the human eye. And the name I want to give you today is not one I invented. It is one I recognized in you as I watched the kind of person who finds their way to a message like this one, who sits with the hard parts without running, who allows the grief to be named and the cost to be honored, and who still, after everything, remains open to what is coming. You are a waymaker, not in the soft or decorative sense, not as a title handed out to anyone who survived a difficult season and wants something beautiful to call it. I mean it in the most specific and earned sense of the word. A waymaker is someone who arrived at a place where there was no road, where the people around them looked at the terrain and said, "There is nothing here," There is no way through this. You are wasting your time. Standing at the edge of something that does not have an opening and who walked forward anyway, not because they were reckless, not because they were unaware of the risk, but because something inside them, something older and deeper and more reliable than the opinion of anyone standing nearby, said the way is here even if you cannot see it yet. And so they took the step, and then another, and the road appeared, beneath their feet as they walked, not before. That is what you have been doing. Every year that you kept moving towards something you could not fully see, every morning you chose the direction of your calling over the comfort of settling. Every moment you refused to let the laughter of people who could not see your road convince you that the road did not exist. You were making a way. You were not waiting for permission to move. You were not waiting for the path to be cleared before you took the first step. You were the clearing. You were the opening. You were the evidence, written in real time and in real cost, that a way exists through terrain that everyone else declared impassable. And here is what I need you to understand about waymakers. The road they make is never just for them. The path that a waymaker cuts through impossible terrain does not close behind them. It stays open. It becomes the road that the person behind them, the one who is 3 years further back in the same kind of waiting, the one who is still in the pit, the one who has not yet found a message like this one, will one day walk without having to fight for every step. You are not just making a way for yourself. You are making a way for everyone who will ever stand where you once stood and need to know that someone went before them and came through. I want to guide you through something now, a moment of seeing, not imagining in the way that feels like fantasy or wishful projection, but seeing in the way that feels like the memory of something that has not happened yet but is nonetheless completely real. I want you to stay with me for this, because what I am about to walk you through is not decoration. It is orientation. It is a way of showing you where you actually are so that you stop measuring your position by the distance you have traveled and start measuring it by the threshold you are already standing on. Picture yourself standing at a doorway, not a grand architectural doorway pulled from a dream or a film, just a real doorway, the kind you could reach out and touch with your actual hand, with the weight of a real door and the feel of a real threshold beneath your feet. Behind you, everything you have walked through to arrive at this exact moment. The years, the seasons that had no name while you were inside them. The relationships that formed you and the ones that broke something in you that took a long time to set properly. The nights when you lay awake arguing with your own doubt, trying to keep the flame of belief alive against a wind that never seemed to stop. The mornings when you chose, one more time, to get up and keep going without any visible reason to believe that getting up and keeping going was going to produce anything different than it had the day before. All of it is behind you. It is real and it has weight, and it has shaped the exact contours of the person who is standing at this doorway right now. Now look down at your feet. You are already on the threshold. You did not have to travel further to get here. You did not have to achieve a certain score or finally convince the right person that you were worth believing in or produce enough external evidence to justify your own internal knowing. You arrived here by showing up, by enduring, by refusing to let the accumulated weight behind you crush what was still alive inside you when everything around you was arguing that it should have died a long time ago. The threshold is not ahead of you. It is beneath you. You are already standing on it. The only question that remains is the direction of your next step. And that step is forward, into a room that has been prepared with a specificity and a care that will take your breath away when you finally see it in full. Now look up. Through the doorway, you cannot see everything that is waiting, and that is not an accident. You are not designed to receive it all at once, because the full weight of what has been prepared for you would overwhelm the very capacity you need in order to receive it well and steward it faithfully. But you can see enough. You can see light. You can see space. You can sense the quality of what is in that. Room the way you can sense the warmth of a fire before you have rounded the corner and seen the flame itself. And what you sense is good. It is specifically, personally, unmistakably good in the way that only something designed for you could ever be good. It is not a generic blessing distributed to whoever happened to show up. It is a prepared place. It has your name on it, and it has been waiting for you with a patience that mirrors exactly the patience that was asked of you. I want to say something to you now that I mean with everything I have, not as a formula or a closing flourish, as a genuine word spoken from someone who has sat beside you through every part of this journey today, who has watched you stay when you could have left, who has watched you remain open when closing would have been easier and more defensible. You are blessed in your rising. On the mornings when the weight of everything unresolved is the first thing you feel before your feet touch the floor, you are blessed in that rising, because you are still rising, and that act, repeated across years of mornings when rising felt like the least reasonable response to the day, is the very thing that made you a waymaker and not simply a survivor. You are blessed in the road you made, the one that did not exist before you walked it, the one that others told you was not there, the one that is now behind you, permanent and real and open to everyone who will come after you and need to know that someone went first. You are blessed in your becoming, not in the finished version of yourself that you are still walking toward, in the becoming itself, in the daily, unglamorous, faithful act of continuing to move in the direction of everything you were made for, even on the days when moving felt like the least reasonable thing available to you. And you are blessed in your name, the name that the people who called you a joke could not touch, no matter how loud they were or how certain they sounded or how long the laughter lasted. That name is Waymaker. It was yours before they laughed. It was yours while they laughed. And it will be yours long after their laughter has become a silence that nobody remembers. I want to talk to you now about what to actually do. Not in the abstract, not in the language of destiny and calling that can sometimes feel beautiful but leave you standing in the same place wondering what to do with your hands on a Tuesday afternoon. I mean specifically, practically, concretely, what you can do today, this week, in the immediate days ahead to cooperate with the shift that is already in motion. Because a waymaker does not only receive revelation, a waymaker takes the revelation and turns it into a direction, and direction requires a step. So let me give you the steps. But before the steps, I want to name the 3 areas where the shift is going to become most visible in your daily lived experience. Because understanding where to look changes how you see, and how you see determines what you are able to receive when it arrives. The first area is your relationships. And I want to be specific about what is coming here because I think the specificity will help you recognize it when it happens rather than missing it because it did not arrive in the form you expected. What is coming in your relational world is a realignment, and it is going to move in 2 directions at the same time. In one direction, you are going to notice that certain connections are completing themselves, not through drama or conflict or a decisive falling out, but through a gentle and almost wordless mutual recognition that the season you shared with certain people has reached its natural end. There will be people you have known for years who will simply begin to occupy less space in your daily life, and the process will feel more like a tide going out than a door being slammed. Let it happen. Do not chase what is completing. Do not manufacture conflict to explain a distance that does not require explanation. Some relationships are seasonal, and honoring the season means being willing to acknowledge when it has changed. In the other direction, and this is the part that chosen ones in a long waiting season are sometimes least prepared for, new connections are going to arrive that feel different from anything you have experienced in a long time. People who recognize what you carry without requiring you to prove it first. People who speak directly to the version of you that you have been protecting behind careful walls, and who respond. To that version, not with skepticism or with the exhausting need to manage your expectations, but with a simple and immediate recognition that says, I see you and I know what this is. These connections are going to feel almost too easy, too natural, too quickly significant, and you are going to be tempted to distrust them precisely because of how right they feel, because you have learned, across years of disappointment, to be suspicious of things that feel like they fit. I want to ask you to resist that suspicion. Not naively, not without wisdom, but with enough openness to allow what was sent to actually land. The practical step in this area is simple. In the next 7 days, reach out to one person whose presence in your life has consistently made you feel more like yourself rather than less. Not to ask for anything, not to process or explain or seek advice. Simply to say, I am thinking of you and I am grateful for what you carry. That single act of relational generosity, offered without agenda, is the kind of step that opens doors in the unseen, before the visible evidence of the opening has appeared. The second area where the shift is coming is in your sense of purpose, and specifically in the question that has been living in you for so long that it has almost become background noise. The question of what am I actually supposed to do with everything I carry? That question, which has sometimes felt like a torment and sometimes like a compass, and sometimes like both at the same time, is about to begin answering itself, not through a dramatic moment of revelation, though those do happen and I would not rule one out for you. More likely through a sequence of small clarities, each one building on the last, each one pointing in a direction that becomes increasingly unmistakable the further you follow it. What you are going to begin noticing is that a particular kind of problem keeps finding you. A particular kind of person keeps showing up with a particular kind of need that you are uniquely equipped to meet. A particular kind of conversation keeps happening where you find yourself saying things you did not plan to say and watching them land with a precision and a power that surprises even you. Pay attention to that pattern. Do not dismiss it as coincidence or as you simply being a helpful person. It is your calling self identifying in real time, showing you in the most practical possible way where your gift is most alive and most needed. The practical step in this area is to take 15 minutes today, before this day is over, and write down 3 moments in the last year when you felt most completely yourself. Not most successful, not most admired, not most productive. Most yourself. Most alive in the specific way that is unique to you. Look at those 3 moments and ask what they have in common. The answer to that question is closer to your next step than any career assessment or personality framework could ever take you. The third area is the one that feels most impossible to believe after a long season of striving, and that is the area of resources and opportunity. I want to speak carefully here because I do not want to offer you a version of this that sounds like a promise disconnected from reality. What I want to offer you is something more grounded and more powerful than a generic declaration that abundance is coming. What I want to tell you is that the mode of effortful straining that has characterized your relationship with opportunity for a long time is beginning to shift. And the shift is not because the world is suddenly becoming easier or because you have finally done enough to deserve a break. The shift is because you are moving into alignment. An aligned effort produces results that unaligned effort, no matter how intense, simply cannot match. You are going to begin noticing that certain things that used to require enormous effort to initiate are beginning to happen with less friction. Conversations that used to require extensive preparation and strategic positioning are going to begin flowing naturally. Opportunities that used to feel like they were behind a locked door you had to batter down are going to begin appearing through doors you did not even know were there. This is not magic. It is alignment. It is what happens when a person who has been prepared by a long season of formation steps into the current of what was always flowing in their direction and stops swimming against it. The practical step in this area is to identify one thing you have been forcing, one effort you have been sustaining through sheer willpower that has produced diminishing returns despite increasing investment, and ask honestly whether it is time to release the forcing and simply hold the intention. There is a difference between releasing something and giving up on it. Giving up means withdrawing belief. Releasing the forcing means trusting that what is yours does not require you to hold it in a white-knuckled grip in order to keep it from escaping. What was appointed for you will not escape. You do not have to chase it down. You simply have to remain open and available in the direction it is already moving. These three areas, relationships, purpose, and resources, are not separate. They are connected by the same underlying shift, the shift from a life organized around surviving the waiting to a life organized around inhabiting the calling. And the movement from one to the other does not happen all at once. It happens one step at a time, one day at a time, one small faithful act of cooperation with what is already in motion. You do not have to figure out the whole road. You only have to take the next step that is visible. And for a waymaker, the next step is always visible, because the road appears beneath your feet as you walk, and it has never once failed to be there when you needed it. Type the words "I receive it" in the comments right now if something in this section landed in a specific and personal way. Not as a performance of agreement, as an act of claiming, as the sound of someone who has decided that what was appointed for them is real enough to reach for with both hands today, in the life they are already living, before the full picture has made itself visible. I want to thank you, not in the polite and automatic way that closes out a conversation without meaning anything, in the specific and personal way that acknowledges what it actually cost you to stay here through all of this. Because you could have left. You could have clicked away when the grief section got too close to something you were not ready to feel. You could have skimmed past the hard parts and waited for the encouragement to arrive without sitting inside the weight of what preceded it. But you did not. You showed up for this the way you have been showing up for everything in your life during this long season, completely, honestly, with whatever you had available, which is the only kind of showing up that actually counts. That matters. The fact that you are still here at this part of the message is not a small thing. It is evidence of exactly what I have been describing this entire time. You are someone who does not leave when things get difficult. You are someone who stays, who endures, who keeps their eyes open even when keeping them open is the harder choice. And that quality, that particular form of faithful presence is the very thing that has been making you a waymaker all along, even in the seasons when you could not see the road you were building. I want you to know that all across the world, right now, in time zones you will never visit and languages you may not speak, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. Some of them are sitting in cars in parking lots because they needed 5 more minutes before going inside. Some of them are lying on floors in rooms that feel too small for everything they are carrying. Some of them are reading this in the blue light of a screen at 2 in the morning because sleep stopped coming weeks ago, and something in them is still searching for a word that names what they are living through. They are all here. In this room, in this message, in this specific gathering of people who were told they were too much and not enough at the same time and who kept going anyway. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. The road you have been walking in what felt like solitude has always been walked by others, at different points along the same terrain, and the waymakers recognize each other even across distances that the eye cannot measure. I want to give you one final practice before you carry this message out into the rest of your day and the rest of your life. I want you to take a breath, a real one, slow and deliberate, the kind that reaches the parts of your body where you store the things you have not yet been able to say out loud. And as you exhale, I want you to picture yourself setting something down, not throwing it away, not destroying it, simply setting it down at the threshold of the doorway we talked about earlier, the one you are already standing in. Every piece of weight you carried into this message today, every unresolved grief, every unanswered question, every fear that dressed itself up as reason and tried to talk you out of believing, every wound that has not yet finished healing, picture yourself gently and deliberately placing all of it at the threshold. You are not abandoning it. You are simply choosing not to carry it into the room that is waiting for you. The room was not designed for the weight. It was designed for you. And you are lighter than you think when you are not carrying everything you have been carrying. Leave the weight at the door. Step forward without it. And trust that what is in the room has been waiting long enough that it will not mind the fact that it took you this long to arrive, because it always knew you were coming, and it always knew the road you had to walk to get here, and it has been patient in the way that only things which were made specifically for you can be patient, with a certainty that your arrival was never in question. Now, if this message found you today and something in it shifted something in you, I want to ask you to do one thing before you go, not for me, so that this message can reach another chosen one who is walking into their week without anyone to name what they are living through. Someone who is sitting in the middle of a season that has no language yet, and who needs a word the way you needed a word today. Like this message if it met you somewhere real. Share it if you know someone who is in the waiting and who needs to be reminded that the waiting is not the ending. Subscribe if you want to keep walking in this direction, because there is more to say and more to receive, and the conversation that began here is only the beginning of what is available to you when you stay in the room. And if the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message, if the conversation about frequency and brain waves and the 7-minute protocol landed in a way that felt less like an advertisement and more like an answer to something you have been quietly carrying, it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. No pressure, no urgency manufactured to override your own wisdom, simply an open door and the knowing that if it is yours, you will recognize it, the same way you recognized this message before it was finished. You came here today carrying something heavy. You are leaving with something you did not have when you arrived, not a solution to everything that is still unresolved, not a guarantee that the road ahead will be smooth or that the people who called you a joke will finally see what they missed, but something quieter and more durable than either of those things. You are leaving with a name. You are leaving with a language for your season. You are leaving with the knowledge that the threshold you are standing on is real, that the room ahead of you is prepared, and that the step forward is yours to take whenever you are ready. And I believe, with everything I have seen in you today, that you are already ready. Go gently from here, not because the road ahead is fragile, but because you are carrying something new now, something that was not named when you arrived. And new things deserve to be held with a steadiness that rushing does not allow. You came into this message as someone who had been called a joke. You are leaving as a waymaker, and the distance between those two identities is not measured in time or in achievement, or in the finally deserved recognition of people who were never qualified to define you in the first place. It is measured in the quiet, stubborn, daily choice to keep believing in the road beneath your feet even when the road was invisible to everyone around you. That choice is yours. It has always been yours. And no one, not the ones who laughed, not the seasons that stretched longer than you thought you could, endure, not the version of yourself that whispered maybe they were right on the hardest mornings. No one has ever been able to take it from you. You are not the name they called you in the chapter where they thought your story ended. You are the name they cannot escape now that the next chapter has begun. And that chapter is not coming. It is here. It is already being written in the steps you are taking, in the frequency you are carrying, in the road that is appearing beneath your feet as you walk forward from this moment. So go. Go into your Tuesday or your Sunday or your 3 in the morning with the knowledge that heaven has been paying attention to every single step of the road you made when there was no road. Go knowing that the waiting was not wasted. Go knowing that the name Waymaker belongs to you not because someone granted it, but because you earned it in the only way it can be earned, by making the way when making the way cost you something real. You are seen. You are known. You are exactly where you were always meant to be. Now take the step.